Okay, y'all. What I'm trying to do is make bread off-grid style, since we're going to be moving off-grid in just probably about 2 or 3 weeks. 3 weeks we should be completely off-grid. Anyway, this is the bread dough that I got started for my off-grid bread. Oh, it smells good. I'm using my same basic recipe. Get that covered back up. It's got about 15 more minutes left on the rise that I set the timer on, but it's almost doubled in volume already. So, we'll see how it goes. I've got some in the bread machine too, just in case. But what's in the bread machine will be dinner rolls to take to my mother's house tomorrow for Easter dinner. But this one I wanted to try to make off-grid. Okay, I've got 3 of these little, that one's called, you probably can't see it, Home Power. Some of them are called Gas 1. Anyway, they're just little butane stoves, and they're safe to use inside. This is the fuel I use for them. And I've got a place, there's a place right up, well, not maybe 10 miles away, where I can get a case of these cans, 28 cans, for $27.50. So it works out pretty good. And I even use these for canning, and 1 can will do a round of meat in the pressure canner, which is 90 minutes in quarts, and still have some left. So it's not too bad. It's not for all day cooking, obviously, but it's fine for cooking meals. Now I'm going to use my big Dutch oven. I've got a lid for it. And I'm going to put parchment paper down in there for the bread. And I'm going to let it bake on really low, and then open it part of the way through and probably flip it over. I don't know yet. I've got to figure all that out, but I think it should do alright. If I have to, I've got a little round rack. It looks pretty rugged, but I've got a little rack I can put in here, or I think my round cake pan will work. Yeah, the cake pan sits right down in there. But when it's hot, it's going to be hard to get out. But actually got a set of channel locks for handling hot pans with. So, I may be just trying it with this cake pan. I don't know. So much to think about. I've baked bread in the oven plenty of times, but I haven't baked actual yeast bread over a fire. And I've done biscuits, so what we call camp biscuits. I've done lots of camp biscuits, so the concept should be about the same. Okay, so here I go with getting the bread kneaded, and I think I've decided to use that little cake pan. Forgot my spray. I'm going to use a little cake pan and just make kind of a round loaf, just a round loaf to go in it, and let it rise, and then I'll be back after that rise, but I wanted to show you using this towel again. I've always, well, not always, but I actually, and I'm going to give a shout out to Mrs. Volpe, Bev, on our half-acre homestead. I saw her using tablecloth or something for, I think I put too much oil in there, for, excuse me, for making her bread and biscuits and stuff, and it just seemed like it worked so good. Let me get this all punched down. Anyway, it seemed like it worked so good and was such an easy cleanup that I got these towels. I think I mentioned them in another bread video. I got these towels to use, and they were really inexpensive, and they're just the right size to use in my little house. And my next house is going to be even smaller. This one is only 600 square feet. Well, the cabin that we're getting is only 200 square feet in the bottom, and then it's got 2 lofts. So, yeah, it's going to be really tiny. I'm having to eliminate a lot of stuff, including, pardon the arm, open. Including all of the electric countertop appliances that I've got. I don't have a whole lot, but I do have 2 roasters and 2 bread machines, electric can opener, food processor, blender. But I've also got hand crank machines, and I'll add some pictures of that stuff. I've got some things that will work by hand, including, let me show you this. Including this mixer. Now, this one is really heavy. It's not. I had one before that was light, and when you tried to turn the crank, the gears would jam up in there and everything. But this one is really thick and heavy. I don't even know how it is. I picked it up at a flea market somewhere a long time ago, and just last night I used some. Oh, sorry about that. Go here and reach it. This is powdered whipped topping mix. I don't know if you can see that or not. Anyway, it's a cup of whipped topping to a cup of cold milk, and you whip it up. And honey, let me tell you, that stuff is good. It is better than Cool Whip ever thought about being. All right, that ought to work. Just let it be in here. Let this loaf rise. And that'll, it's not in the view. There, sorry, I bet half of that wasn't even in the view, was it? Anyway, this bread is pretty, feels good. It's pretty nice. It's soft, but it's just springy enough to come back now. After I've kneaded it a few times, punched it down. Let it rise in here, and then I'll bake it in that Dutch oven on the flame, turned low. And I'm going to have to really keep an eye on it, because this is the first time I've ever baked actual yeast bread off grid. So, y'all keep your fingers crossed. Okay, nothing fancy, just going to be some dinner rolls. Get down there a little more closer. As long as the dog that's under my feet doesn't kick this camera down. Okay. Just knead them a few times. Get the air worked out. Roll it up into a log, kind of like I did the sandwich rolls. It turned out not that great, but they did taste good, and we used them. When you can make bread, you're miles ahead of the game, I think, because even if I add extra ingredients, like an egg, which our chickens lay eggs. Spray that pan. If I add an egg, or like with dinner rolls, I'll put an egg in there and an extra spoonful of sugar. Anyway, probably 50 to 75 cents for a big pan of fresh homemade dinner rolls. You really can't beat that. A loaf of bread, plain bread, like the one that I'm making, is I think I'm just going to make 8 nice big dinner rolls. I usually make 12, but I think I'd like really big ones this time if I can. Anyway, a loaf of bread generally is going to be, well, a loaf of good bread at the store, what, $2 or $3 now? Holy cow, I can't afford that. But I can make a loaf of bread. I'm just going to roll these up, get them smoothed out on the top, like that. These won't spread like those other ones did. But I can make a loaf of bread, really nice bread, for 50 cents or less. I mean, who doesn't want to save some money? Dry flour. Anyway, who doesn't like saving money? I love saving money. Get out of there, Bubble. And bread making at home isn't really that difficult with the bread machine. And you just have to kind of think ahead. Because this isn't like running to the store to get a loaf of bread. So you have to know ahead of time. Now, some people make a week's worth of bread at a time. I don't do that. Because I don't know from one week to the next how much bread we will actually eat. So I make, I usually try to make it a few times a week. And with a bread machine. Making bread off grid is going to be a little different matter, but it's probably going to be just as important to only make it a few times a week instead of every day. That one's going to be too big. I'll add some of that to that one. Get off me. Anyway, make it a few times a week so it'll stay fresh. I mean, fresh homemade bread is so much better than week-old homemade bread. This dough is just right. See, it's not sticking to my hand. That's the way it should be. It should not be sticky or gummy. And once again, I don't scale these. I just make them, which means they're going to be some different sizes. I might use the blade and like cut something across the middle, a little line across the middle, so it's easier for us to open them tomorrow. This one's going to be pretty small. Just get some more out of that. Yeah, I try to make them approximate, and that's about it. One of these days I'll get the scale out and weigh the dough and weigh the rolls and all that kind of stuff, but today is not the day. I'm just wanting to get these finished up. I know they'll be good. I put butter in these instead of oil, and they've got egg in them. So that makes a really nice dinner roll. And I will put my dinner roll recipe down there. And I'll put my off-grid bread recipe down there. And that way you can try it if you want to. Now, the off-grid bread recipe will work all the way through on the bread machine. You don't have to do it off-grid. You can let the bread machine even bake it. But I prefer baking in the oven because you come up with a lot nicer crust. The bottom crust isn't, which the bottom on them, the bread machine makes it tall though. The outside and the bottom crust winds up being really thick and tough from baking in the bread machine. But when you bake them in the oven, when you finish the rise in the oven and bake them in the oven, it's beautiful. All the crust is so tender and nice. Okay, I'm going to let these all rise, and I'll come back when I get ready to start baking the off-grid bread.